The drift was the kind of place where people came to disappear. It floated in the dark space between star systems, far from any law or government. Pirates, smugglers, and criminals called it home. So did Taiho Park. 3 years ago, Taiho had been a commander in the Korean Space Navy. He had a good ship, a loyal crew, and a future bright enough to blind anyone who looked at it. Then came the mission to Colony 7. Then came the ambush. Then came the deaths of 42 people under his command. The military said it was his fault. They needed someone to blame, and Taiho was convenient. They took his rank, his honor, and his reason to live. He drifted to the drift because it seemed like the right place for a ghost. Now he hauled cargo for criminals. He slept in a tiny room that smelled like engine oil. He drank cheap alcohol and tried not to dream about the faces of dead friends. He was 31 years old and felt like 100. On the night, everything changed. Taiho was walking through the station's lower levels. He was looking for a parts dealer who owed him money. Instead, he found a crowd gathered around a large doorway. Music and shouting came from inside. A sign above the door said, "Special auction tonight." Taiho knew what that meant. The drift held auctions for things that couldn't be sold anywhere else. Weapons. Illegal technology. Sometimes people. He should have walked away. He had no money and no interest in whatever horror was being sold tonight. But something pulled him forward. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was fate. He pushed through the crowd and stepped inside. The auction hall was packed with the worst kinds of beings from across the galaxy. Crime lords with cybernetic eyes. Warlords covered in battle scars. Merchants who sold death like other people sold vegetables. They all stared at the stage with hungry eyes. Taiho looked at the stage too, and his heart stopped. She stood nearly 7 feet tall. Her skin was silver blue, like moonlight on water. She had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle. Her face was sharp and beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, like a blade made of ice. Her eyes glowed soft gold, but they were empty. Dead. She wore chains on her wrists and ankles, and a metal muzzle covered her mouth. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer announced, his voice full of sick excitement, "I present to you the prize of a lifetime. The last queen of the Vethkai, the deadliest warrior species the galaxy has ever known. Her people conquered 12 star systems before the Galactic Accord finally stopped them. She's the final survivor of the royal bloodline. She has killed over 300 enemies in personal combat. She is power itself, and tonight she can be yours." The crowd went wild with bids. Numbers flew through the air like bullets. 10,000 credits. 50,000. 100,000. Taiho couldn't stop staring at her. Not at her body or her strength, but at her eyes. He recognized that look. He saw it in his own mirror every morning. It was the look of someone who had lost everything and was just waiting to die. Her name, the auctioneer said, was Yura, the last Vethkai queen. Her people had traded her to the Galactic Accord as part of a peace agreement. She had been passed from owner to owner, a trophy for powerful men who wanted to say they owned the most dangerous thing in the universe. The bidding reached 500,000 credits. A fat crime lord named Bosquan was winning. He laughed and talked about the things he would make her do. The crowd laughed with him. Yura stood perfectly still. She didn't react to any of it. She was already somewhere else in her mind, hiding in whatever place prisoners go when reality becomes too painful. Taiho felt something break inside him. He didn't know this woman. He had no connection to her. He was a broken man with nothing to offer anyone. But he couldn't watch this happen. He couldn't let her become a toy for monsters. His hand went up before his brain could stop it. 1,000,000 credits, he heard himself say. The room went silent. Every eye turned to look at the small human in the worn jacket and cheap boots. Bosquan's face twisted with anger. Who are you? The crime lord demanded. Nobody, Taiho said. His voice was calm, even though his heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. 1 million credits. I'll sign a debt contract. The auctioneer's eyes lit up. A debt contract meant Taiho was promising to pay, even if it destroyed him. The station's enforcers would hunt him across the galaxy if he failed. 1 million going once, the auctioneer said quickly, before Bosquan could respond. Going twice. Sold to the human. The crowd erupted in whispers. Bosquan looked at Taiho with murder in his eyes. Taiho ignored him. He walked to the stage on legs that felt like water up close. Yura was even more impressive. Her muscles could crush steel. Her golden eyes could burn holes through walls. She looked down at him like he was an insect, and honestly, compared to her, he was. Taiho reached up and unlocked her muzzle. It fell to the floor with a heavy clang. The crowd gasped. Several people ran for the exits, expecting her to start killing. Yura didn't move. She just stared at him with confusion mixed into her emptiness. I'm not your master, Taiho said quietly, so only she could hear. I don't believe in owning people, but I do have a ship and I can get you off this station. After that, you can go wherever you want. Kill me if you feel like it. I probably deserve it anyway. For a long moment, Yura said nothing. Her eyes searched his face, looking for lies, tricks, or hidden cruelty. She had seen all of those things many times before. She found none of them in this strange little human. Why? She finally asked. Her voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. It was the first word she had spoken in months. Taiho thought about the question. He could have said something noble, something heroic. Instead, he told her the truth. Because someone should have helped me when I was drowning, he said. No one did. I don't want to be like everyone else. Yura considered this. Then she stepped down from the stage and stood beside him. The crowd parted like water around two stones. They walked out of the auction hall together. Behind them, Bosquan was already planning his revenge. Around them, whispers spread like fire. A human had just bought the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. Neither Taiho nor Yura looked back. They had both left too many things behind already. Whatever came next, they would face it. They just didn't know yet that next would change both of their lives forever. Taiho's ship was called the Hamaru. It was old, ugly, and held together by hope and cheap repairs. The paint was peeling. The engines made worrying sounds. The heating system worked only when it felt like it. Yura looked at the ship and said nothing. Taiho could feel her judgment. I know, he said. It's not exactly a royal transport. It is garbage, Yura replied flatly. Garbage that flies, Taiho corrected. That's more than most garbage can say. He led her inside. The interior was cramped but clean. Taiho had always kept things organized, even when his life was falling apart. It was one of the few habits from his military days that he hadn't lost. He showed Yura to a small room with a bed. It's not much, but it's yours. Door locks from the inside. I won't bother you unless there's an emergency. Yura examined the room like a soldier checking for traps. Finding none, she turned back to him. You spent 1 million credits you do not have. You removed my chains. You give me a private room. What do you actually want from me, human? Nothing, Taiho said. Everyone wants something. Not me. I just want to sleep and maybe not die tomorrow. Beyond that, I have no plans. He shrugged. Get some rest. We leave in 2 hours. He walked away before she could ask more questions he didn't have answers to. They didn't get 2 hours. They got 45 minutes. Taiho was in the pilot's seat, preparing for launch when the alarm started screaming. His screens showed 6 ships approaching fast. They were hunter vessels, armed and dangerous. "Boss Guan sends his regards," a voice crackled over the radio. "Hand over the Vethkai, and we might let you live." Taiho switched off the radio. He had heard enough threats for one lifetime. His fingers flew across the controls, bringing the old ship to life. The engines roared like angry animals. YURA appeared in the doorway. "What is happening? Remember the angry fat man from the auction? He wants you back. And me dead." Taiho pulled the ship off the station's dock just as laser fire burned through the space where they had been. "Sit down and hold on to something. This is going to get ugly." The chase that followed was madness. Taiho flew the Hamaru through the asteroid field surrounding the drift. Rocks the size of buildings tumbled through space. One wrong move meant death. The hunter ships followed, firing constantly. Yura watched him pilot. She had seen great warriors before. She had seen brilliant commanders and fearless soldiers. But she had never seen anything quite like this. Taiho wasn't strong. His reflexes weren't superhuman. By any galactic standard, he was weak and slow. But he flew like the ship was part of his body. He anticipated problems before they happened. He took risks that should have killed them and somehow made them work. He was laughing. "Are you insane?" Yura demanded. "Probably," Taiho admitted, spinning the ship between two colliding asteroids. "But look at them. They're too scared to follow that move. We're going to make it." They almost made it. A lucky shot from the lead hunter hit the Hamaru's side. The hull cracked open. Air started rushing out. Warning lights painted everything red. Worse. The shot had knocked a hunter ship close enough to dock. Taiho heard the sound of metal connecting the metal. Someone was boarding. "Stay here," he told Yura, grabbing a pistol from under his seat. "I'll handle it." "You will die," Yura said simply. It wasn't an insult. It was a fact. "Maybe, probably, but this is my ship and my problem." Before he could move, the airlock door exploded inward. A massive creature stepped through. It was a Grawl, an insectoid species known for being perfect killers. It had 4 arms like Yura, but covered in hard shell instead of skin. Its eyes were black pits of hunger. It saw Taiho and charged. Taiho fired his pistol. The shots hit the Grawl's chest and did nothing. The creature's shell was too thick. Taiho tried to dodge, but he wasn't fast enough. A massive claw caught him across the chest and threw him into the wall. Pain exploded through his body. He tasted blood. His vision went blurry. The Grawl moved toward him for the finishing blow. Then Yura was there. She moved faster than anything Taiho had ever seen. Her 4 arms grabbed the Grawl before it could react. She twisted. Something cracked. The Grawl screamed. She twisted again, harder, and the scream stopped forever. The body fell to the floor in pieces. Yura stood over it, breathing hard. Silver blood that wasn't hers dripped from her hands. She looked like a goddess of war. She looked like death itself. She also looked at Taiho with something that might have been concern. "You are injured," she said. "I've had worse," Taiho lied, trying to stand and failing. "Maybe not much worse. Can you patch the hull?" Yura stared at him. "Your first thought is the ship. If the ship dies, we die. Priorities." He coughed blood. "Emergency patches are in the storage room. Yellow box. Please hurry." She found the patches and sealed the hull breach. Then she pulled the hunter ship's docking clamps free and kicked it into space. Then she came back to Taiho and lifted him like he weighed nothing. "I can walk," he protested weakly. "You cannot." She carried him to the medical bay and set him on the table. "Where are the healing supplies?" He pointed. She worked quickly, cleaning his wounds and applying medicine. Her hands were surprisingly gentle for things that had just torn a creature apart. "You do not fear me," Yura observed as she worked. I just killed with my bare hands. You saw what I am. Yet your heart rate did not increase when I approached you. Taiho thought about this. I've been afraid of plenty of things, he admitted. Being afraid of you would just be exhausting. You're not going to hurt me. How do you know this? Because you're here patching me up instead of taking the ship and leaving. He tried to smile. It probably looked terrible. Besides, you saved my life. That means something where I come from. Yura was quiet for a long moment. In her entire life, no one had ever thanked her for violence. No one had ever looked at her capabilities and seen protection instead of threat. You are a strange human, she finally said. I've been called worse. They found a jungle moon to hide on while Taiho recovered. For 3 days, Yura hunted for food while he healed. She could have taken everything for herself. She was stronger, faster, and didn't need him at all. Instead, she shared everything equally. When Taiho asked why, she didn't have an answer. She was still figuring that out. On the third night, they sat by a fire. Taiho was cooking something he had caught. The smell was actually pleasant. Yura watched him work. You were a soldier, she said. Before. Commander. Korean Space Navy. He didn't look at her. I got my crew killed. Or the military said I did. Same result either way. You carry guilt. Every day. Yura understood guilt. She carried her own. Her people had traded her away like cargo. She had let them, too broken to fight. She still dreamed of their faces turning away from her. We are both ghosts, she said quietly. Taiho finally looked at her. In the firelight, his eyes were sad but warm. Maybe, but ghosts can still help each other. If they want to. He offered her a portion of the food. She took it. That night, something small but important changed between them. They weren't quite friends yet. They weren't enemies. They were two broken creatures orbiting each other, slowly getting closer. Neither of them knew where it was going. Neither of them minded. They needed money. The debt to the auction house was a blade hanging over Taiho's neck. Every day they hid was another day the interest grew larger. Eventually, the collectors would find them, and no amount of running would save them. Taiho found a job on the salvage network. A derelict ship had been discovered drifting in dead space. It had been there for decades. No one had claimed it because no one wanted to go near it. It was a Vethkai dreadnought. When Taiho told Yura about the job, she went very still. Her golden eyes dimmed like candles in wind. That ship belonged to my people, she said quietly. It was part of the invasion fleet. Part of the war. I know. That's why it's worth so much. Vethkai technology is rare and valuable. Taiho paused. If you don't want to go, I understand. I can find another job. Yura was silent for a long time. Then she shook her head. No, I will go. Perhaps it is time I face my ghosts. The journey took 3 days. When the dreadnought appeared on their screens, Taiho understood why no one else had taken the job. The ship was massive. It made the Hummeru look like a toy. Its hull was black and covered in strange patterns that seemed to move when you looked at them too long. Even dead and drifting, it radiated menace. It felt wrong in a way that made Taiho's teeth ache. My people built their ships to inspire fear, Yura explained. Even the metal itself was designed to cause discomfort in other species. Well, it works. Taiho guided them to a docking port. Stay close to me in there. I don't want to get separated. The interior of the dreadnought was dark and cold. Their flashlights cut through shadows that seemed too thick to be natural. The walls were covered in Vethkai writing. Yura read it silently as they walked, her expression growing more troubled with each passage. They found bodies. Vethkai warriors frozen in death, still at their posts after all these years. Some had died fighting. Some had died running. Some had died curled up in corners, like children hiding from monsters. Yura stopped at one body. It was a female, smaller than her, wearing the uniform of a communications officer. She touched the frozen face gently. "I knew her," Yura whispered. "Her name was Hannah. She was kind. She used to tell jokes that made everyone laugh." Her voice cracked. "Why is she here? Why did she die afraid?" Taiho didn't have an answer. He just stood beside her and waited. They found the ship's command center. The computer systems were damaged, but not destroyed. Taiho worked for an hour to restore enough power to access the records. When he finally succeeded, Yura sat at the main console and began to read. What she found changed everything. The official history said the Vethkai were monsters. They were conquerors who attacked innocent worlds for no reason. They were a plague that had to be stopped. The galaxy celebrated their defeat as a victory of good over evil. The records told a different story. The Vethkai had not started as conquerors. They had been explorers, scientists, builders. Their home system was in a distant part of the galaxy that no other species had ever visited. They were alone, and they were happy. Then something found them. The records called it the Hollowing. It was a darkness that came from beyond known space. It consumed everything it touched. Not just killing, but erasing, absorbing, making things part of itself. The Hollowing destroyed the Vethkai homeworld in 3 days. Billions died. The survivors fled in their ships, desperate and terrified. They searched for a new home, but every world they found was already claimed by other species. Species who saw the Vethkai as threats and attacked them. So the Vethkai fought back. They conquered because they had no other choice. Every world they took was another place the Hollowing couldn't reach. Every species they defeated was another potential ally lost to fear and misunderstanding. The Galactic Accord hadn't defeated the Vethkai through military strength. They had simply waited. The Vethkai had exhausted themselves fighting wars they never wanted. In the end, they surrendered because they had nothing left to fight with. Yura traded herself for peace. She let herself become a prisoner so her people could survive. And then, slowly, quietly, the galaxy had let the surviving Vethkai die out anyway. Disease, poverty, neglect, convenient accidents. She was truly the last one. The console showed a final message from the ship's captain. A male named Tyke. He was old and tired, and his words were heavy with despair. "If anyone finds this, know the truth. We were not evil. We were afraid. The darkness is still out there. It will come again. When it does, remember that we tried to warn you. We tried to save everyone. No one listened." The message ended. Yura sat motionless. Then something inside her shattered, and she began to cry. It was not a small, quiet weeping. It was the kind of crying that comes from the deepest parts of a soul. Years of rage and pride and hatred poured out of her like poison from a wound. She cried for her people. She cried for herself. She cried for everything she had believed that turned out to be lies. Taiho didn't say anything. He just sat down beside her on the cold metal floor of the dead ship. He didn't try to comfort her with words because there were no words for this kind of pain. After a long time, Yura's crying slowed. She looked at him with eyes that were red and swollen and utterly lost. "Everything I was taught," she said hoarsely. "My pride, my purpose, my hatred. It was all built on lies. I thought my people were warriors. We were just scared. We were running, and no one helped us. And now everyone is dead." Taiho was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "When my crew died, I blamed myself for years. I thought I was a failure, a coward, a man who didn't deserve to live. I believed what everyone told me. He looked at her. It took me a long time to realize that carrying other people's blame doesn't make it yours. Your people did what they had to do to survive. That's not evil. That's just life. But the galaxy thinks we were monsters. The galaxy is full of idiots who believe whatever is convenient. He shrugged. What matters is what you believe. What you do next. Yura stared at him. You lost 42 people. You carry that weight every day. How do you keep going? Taiho thought about this. Because stopping won't bring them back. Because somewhere out there, someone might need my help. Because I'm too stubborn to give up. He offered her a small, sad smile. We don't get to choose the past, Yura, but we can choose what comes next. She looked at him for a long time. Not at a human. Not at a weak creature who had foolishly bought her at an auction. She looked at a man who understood loss. A man who carried his own darkness, but still found reasons to move forward. Taiho, she said. It was the first time she had spoken his name. Not human, not you. His name. He blinked in surprise. Yeah? Thank you. For sitting with me in the dark. He nodded. Anytime. They stayed in the dead ship for another hour. They collected valuable technology that would pay off Taiho's debt and more. But neither of them cared much about the money anymore. Something had changed between them. A wall had come down. They were no longer two strangers sharing a ship. They were two ghosts who had decided to haunt the universe together. Word spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The last Vethkai queen was alive. She was traveling with a human. She was no longer in chains. Some people were curious. Most were terrified. A few were angry. The Galactic Accord sent messages demanding that Taiho hand her over. They called her a dangerous asset that needed to be contained for public safety. Taiho deleted every message without reading past the first line. Bounty hunters came next. One after another, they tracked the Hamaru and tried to collect the reward on Yura's head. One after another, they failed. Some ran away when they saw what she could do. Some didn't get the chance to run. Through it all, Taiho noticed something changing in Yura. She was still deadly. She was still frightening to anyone who didn't know her. But the emptiness in her eyes was fading. She smiled sometimes, usually at his terrible jokes. She asked questions about human culture, about Earth, about the foods he cooked. She was coming back to life. He was changing too. The weight he had carried for years felt lighter. He drank less. He slept better. He found himself looking forward to each new day. Instead of dreading it, neither of them talked about what was happening between them. Some things don't need words. The trouble with Boss Guan had never really gone away. Taiho's debt was paid, but the crime lord's pride was not. He had been humiliated at the auction. He had lost men in the asteroid chase. He wanted revenge. Taiho learned that Guan was gathering forces for a serious attack. Not just hunters this time. A small army. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. Running wasn't an option anymore. They needed help. Taiho did something he had never done before. He reached out to his past. The first call went to a woman named Jiwoo. She was a hacker who lived in the digital shadows. Years ago, Taiho had saved her from a data cartel that wanted her dead. She owed him everything, and she had been waiting for him to ask. "I thought you forgot about me," she said through the screen. Her face was young, but her eyes were old. "What do you need?" "I need someone who can turn technology into a weapon. I need someone who isn't afraid of impossible odds." Jiwoo grinned. Finally, something fun. The second call went to a man named Do-hyun. He was an ex-Marine, discharged after a mission went wrong. Taiho had been his commander on that mission. He had carried Do-hyun's broken body for 6 miles through enemy territory. The military blamed them both for the failure. "I wondered when you'd call," Do-hyun said. His voice was rough from years of drinking. Heard you bought yourself an alien queen. You always did have strange taste. I need a soldier. Someone who knows how to fight and isn't afraid to die. Brother, I've been waiting to die for years. Might as well do it for a good reason. The third call went to a woman named Myray. She was a medic, one of the best in the galaxy. She had served under Taiho before everything fell apart. She had watched him take the blame for failures that weren't his fault. She had never forgiven the military for what they did to him. I'm in, she said before he even finished explaining. Send me coordinates. They gathered on a small station in neutral space. Jiwoo with her computers and her death wish. Do-hyun with his guns and his guilt. Myray with her medical supplies and her quiet anger. The Hamaru had never carried so many people before. It felt strange. It felt right. Yura watched these humans work together. They argued constantly. They made fun of each other. They complained about the food and the cramped space and Taiho's terrible taste in music. But underneath all of it was something she had never experienced in her life as a queen. They cared about each other. Not because of duty or honor or fear, but because they chose to. This is how humans fight? She asked Taiho one night. With laughter and insults? This is how humans live, he corrected. We're not strong like you. We're not fast or tough or scary. We survive by sticking together, by being too stubborn to give up. He smiled. Besides, if I have to die, I'd rather do it with people I actually like. Yura thought about this. Her armies had been built on obedience and terror. Her warriors had been tools, nothing more. She had commanded thousands and been completely alone. Now she was surrounded by 4 humans in a tiny ship. And she felt less alone than ever before. Boss Guan found them 3 days later. His fleet was impressive. 20 ships, each one armed with enough weapons to crack a moon. He had hired the best mercenaries, the most ruthless killers. He wanted this done properly. Taiho looked at the screens showing the approaching fleet. Then he looked at his crew. Anyone want to run? He asked. No one answered. Jiwoo was already typing furiously. Do-hyun was loading his weapons. Myray was preparing the medical bay. Yura stood beside Taiho, her 4 arms ready for battle. They fought. Jiwoo hacked into Guan's ships and turned their systems against each other. 3 ships crashed into each other in the first minute. 5 more lost weapons control and started spinning helplessly. Do-hyun manned the Hemaru's guns. He wasn't the best shot in the galaxy, but he was angry and determined, and that counted for a lot. He took down 4 ships before they got too close. Yura did what she was born to do. When enemy soldiers boarded, she met them like a storm. She was faster than their eyes could follow. She was stronger than their armor could handle. She was everything they had feared, and she was protecting her family. But there were too many. For every enemy they killed, 2 more appeared. The Hemaru was taking damage. Systems were failing. The end was coming. Then Taiho did something insane. He flew the Hamaru directly at Boss Guan's flagship. Alarm screamed. His crew shouted. He ignored everything and pushed the engines to maximum dot at the last possible second. He fired the emergency thrusters and pulled up, scraping along the flagship's hull. In that moment, while everyone was distracted, he ejected from the Hamaru in a small escape pod. He landed on the flagship's surface. He walked through the emergency airlock. He found Boss Guan on the command deck, surrounded by guards. You came alone? Guan laughed. Are all humans this stupid? Just me, Taiho said. Guan stopped laughing when Taiho pulled out a small device. It was a dead man switch. If Taiho's heart stopped, the device would send a signal. That signal would release a virus Jiwoo had planted in the flagship's computers. The virus would destroy everything. You wouldn't, Guan said. You'd die too. That's the point. Taiho's voice was calm. I'm not afraid of dying. I've been waiting for a good reason for years. Is your revenge worth your life? Guan's face twisted with fury. He lunged for Taiho, fists swinging. The crime lord was stronger than Taiho. He was bigger and faster and knew how to fight. He beat Taiho bloody. He broke his ribs, his nose, his arm. Taiho fell to the ground, coughing blood, still holding the dead man's switch. Just die, Guan screamed. Taiho laughed through broken teeth. It was a wet, horrible sound. You're going to have a really bad day. The wall exploded inward. Yura came through like a natural disaster. She had crossed from the Hamaru to the flagship through space itself, using nothing but her own strength and a stolen thruster pack. What she did to Guan's guards cannot be described. It was not fighting. It was slaughter. When she reached Guan himself, he tried to run. She caught him with 2 arms. Her other 2 arms finished him. Then she was kneeling beside Taiho, her hands strangely gentle on his broken body. "You fool," she whispered. "You magnificent, stupid fool." Taiho tried to smile. It probably looked terrible. "Had to buy you time. You almost died. Worth it." She lifted him carefully, like he was made of glass. As she carried him back toward the Hamaru, she whispered something in Vethkai. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling behind them. She was claiming him. Not as property, not as a prize, as something worth more than all the stars in the sky. She was telling the universe that he belonged to her, and she would burn worlds for him. Taiho didn't know any of this. He had passed out from pain. But somewhere deep inside, in the place where souls touch souls, he felt it, and he didn't mind at all. Taiho spent 2 weeks recovering from his injuries. Myre worked miracles with limited supplies, putting his broken body back together piece by piece. Yura never left his side. She sat beside his bed, watching him breathe, making sure his heart kept beating. The others noticed. Jiwoo made jokes about it. Dawn smiled but said nothing. Myre just shook her head and muttered about aliens and humans and things that shouldn't make sense, but somehow did. When Taiho finally woke up properly, the first thing he saw was Yura's face. She looked tired. She looked worried. She looked beautiful in a way that made his broken ribs hurt even more. "How long was I out?" he asked. 12 days. "You nearly died 3 times. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "I thought I had lost you. Takes more than a beating to kill me." He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Maybe a lot more, eventually. Yura didn't smile. "This is not a joke. You threw your life away for a plan that should not have worked. But it did work. That is not the point. Then what is?" She was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller than he had ever heard it. "I have lost everything before. My world, my people, my purpose. I thought I had nothing left to lose." She looked at him with golden eyes that held galaxies of emotion. "I was wrong. I cannot lose you, Taiho. I am not strong enough to survive that." Taiho reached out with his good arm and took her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth. Her fingers could crush steel. They held his like he was made of something precious. "You won't lose me," he said. "I promise. You cannot make such promises. Watch me." She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. In Vethkai culture, this was more intimate than any kiss. It was a sharing of breath, of thoughts, of souls. "You are impossible," she whispered. "I know." For the first time since they had met, she smiled. A real smile, full of warmth and wonder and something that looked a lot like love. Then the alarm started screaming. The hollowing had found them. The darkness from beyond, known space. The thing that had destroyed the Vethkai homeworld had never truly disappeared. It had been sleeping, waiting, growing in the void between galaxies. Something had woken it up. Perhaps it was the signals from the dreadnought they had salvaged. Perhaps it was Yura's genetic signature, the last echo of the species it had failed to completely consume. Perhaps it was just hungry again. Whatever the reason, it was coming. And it was coming fast, the Galactic Accord finally noticed. Ships gathered. Fleets assembled. For the first time in 100 years, every species in the galaxy prepared to fight the same enemy. But even with all that firepower, the generals were afraid. The Hollowing had destroyed entire civilizations. What could they possibly do against such darkness? Taiho had an idea. They still had the Vethkai dreadnought. Its engines were dead, but its core was intact. A weapon of unimaginable power, designed specifically to fight the Hollowing. The Vethkai had never had a chance to use it properly. They had been too scattered, too desperate, too alone. But Taiho had Jiwoo to reprogram the systems. He had Do-Yoon to handle the weapons. He had Mireille to keep everyone alive. He had Yura, who knew every inch of her people's technology. The plan was simple and insane. Fly the dreadnought into the heart of the Hollowing. Detonate the core. Destroy the darkness once and for all. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. Yura volunteered immediately. This was her people's fight. Their unfinished war. She would end it or die trying. Taiho volunteered 1 second later. No, Yura said firmly. You have already almost died for me once. I will not allow it again. You can't stop me. I can tie you to a bed. That's not very romantic. She stared at him with frustration and fear and desperate love. This is not a joke, Taiho. I am going to my death. You do not have to come. You're right. I don't have to. He stood up, ignoring the pain in his still healing body. But I want to, because where you go, I go. Because I spent years looking for a reason to live, and I finally found one. And I'm not letting her fly into an alien monster alone. Taiho, I love you. The words came out easily, like they had been waiting to be spoken for a long time. I don't know how that happened. I don't know why a broken human and a terrifying alien queen make any kind of sense together. But I love you. And if we're going to die, I want us to die together. Yura was silent. For a moment, Taiho thought he had made a terrible mistake. Then she crossed the distance between them and kissed him. It was careful because she could easily break his bones. It was gentle because she had never kissed anyone before. It was perfect because it was them. You are mine, she said against his lips. And I am yours. Whatever happens next, remember that. Always. They flew the dreadnought into battle. The Hollowing was vast. It looked like a cloud made of screaming faces. It swallowed light. It consumed sound. It was every nightmare anyone had ever had, given form and hunger. The Accord's fleet attacked from all sides. Weapons that could destroy planets barely scratched its surface. Ships that got too close were absorbed, their crews becoming part of the darkness. Fear spread through the allied forces like disease. But in the middle of it all, one ancient ship kept moving forward. Jiwoo's hacking kept their systems running when they should have failed. Dohan's weapons carved a path through tendrils of living shadow. Mireille kept everyone functioning through impossible stress. Yura guided them using knowledge passed down through generations of Vethkai warriors. And Taiho flew like the devil himself was on their tail. They reached the center of the Hollowing, the core of the beast, where the darkness was thickest. The dreadnought's weapons armed. The countdown began, 60 seconds until detonation. The Hollowing seemed to sense what was happening. It screamed in frequencies that hurt their minds. It threw everything it had at the ship. The hull cracked. Systems failed. The end was coming. 30 seconds. It has been an honor, Dahyun said over the intercom. See you on the other side, Jiwoo added. No regrets. Myre finished. 10 seconds. Yura looked at Taiho. He looked at her. No words were needed. The explosion was beautiful. A light brighter than any sun, tearing through the darkness like a sword through shadow. The hollowing screamed one final time and then began to fall apart. Centuries of horror ended in an instant. Accord's fleet watched in disbelief as the enemy dissolved into nothing. Then they noticed a small ship limping away from the explosion's edge. The Hamaru had been docked inside the dreadnought. At the last moment, Jiwoo had launched it remotely. The blast wave caught them anyway, sending them tumbling through space. But the ship held together. Barely. Impossibly. Stubbornly. Because that was the human way. When rescue ships finally reached them, they found 5 people unconscious but alive. Against all odds. Against all logic. Alive. The galaxy celebrated. The hollowing was gone. The war was over. The Galactic Accord offered Yura everything. Citizenship, protection, a comfortable life among the people who had once feared her. She refused. I have a ship, she said. I have a crew. I have a stubborn human who looks at me like I am the most beautiful thing he has ever seen. She smiled. I have everything I need. Taiho took her hand. Ready to go? Where? Anywhere. Everywhere. Does it matter? It didn't. They walked back to the Hamaru together. Jiwoo was already arguing with Do-yoon about something stupid. Myre was complaining about the medical supplies they needed. The ship was damaged and ugly, and held together by hope. It was home. Yura, the last queen of the Vethkai, ruler of nothing and everything that mattered, looked at her family and felt something she had never felt before. Peace. Taiho caught her expression and smiled. What are you thinking about? I am thinking that I was wrong about something. What's that? I thought love was weakness. Something that could be used against you. She looked at him with eyes full of starlight. I was wrong. Love is the strongest thing in the universe. Strong enough to save even someone like me. Taiho squeezed her hand. Someone like you deserved saving. It just took a while for the universe to figure that out. They launched into the stars. Behind them, the galaxy continued spinning. Wars would come and go. Empires would rise and fall. The darkness might return someday, hungry for another meal. But somewhere among the endless lights, a tiny ship carried a family of misfits toward the next adventure. A human who had found his reason to live. An alien queen who had found her heart. And a love that would terrify the universe if it ever fully understood what it was facing. The galaxy's most feared woman had been claimed by a nobody from a small blue planet. And she wouldn't have had it any other way.